these leaders will say, those aren't Canadian values. Well, those aren't yet. No, I'm talking about Christ's values. I'm talking about biblical values.
Hello, my friends. You know, it gives me great joy to introduce you to our next guest. Jeff Gunnarson is the leader of Campaign Life Coalition. He's been a friend for many, many years. He saw LifeSite right from its very, very beginnings. And he's a man of great faith. He's also a man who's been involved in politics for decades and decades. No better man to talk about what is happening in Canada with the election coming up on April 28th, with understanding what Trump's 51st state comments are doing, and how that's all playing out. You're going to learn about the leaders, Mark Carney, Pierre Poilievre, whatever else there is. And you're going to hear some fascinating understanding about Canada, where it stands on the world stage, and what Canada really needs to do to come back to sanity. Stay tuned for this episode of the John Henry Weston Show with Jeff Gunnarson. Jeff, so good to be with you.
Thank you. Very, very nice to be here, John Henry.
Let's begin as we always do, with the sign of the cross. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Ghost. Amen. Okay, so Jeff, the first thing I wanted to ask you about, because, I mean, this is on everyone's mind. So Trump made the 51st state comment. At the first time he said governor could be Trudeau, and we were all like freaking out. That was a bad idea. But even after that, we thought, oh, it's just a joke. Then it seemed to be not so much of a joke. Carolyn Levitt saying from her little dais there that, they will be our 51st state during the hockey game they lost, which was great. But we had then this stuff become serious and then get taken into the political sphere in Canada, the Liberals using it. It's being used all over the place now. What's happening right now in the Canadian scene? How is this playing out?
Well, you gave it a good outline there. A lot of people are confused, and you're right. We did. I certainly thought it was a joke, that he was just being provocative. And to a degree, I still believe that. I don't think there's any way that he could do that, or that we would be willing to become the 51st state. And it's not because we hate or dislike Trump. It's because we actually, believe it or not, do have a Canadian loyalty, a sense of identity and purpose here, despite all the really, really ugly, bad political scene that we have here. It sort of allows those people, especially now, let me talk especially about Christian Catholic Canadians. It gives those people who didn't like Trump in the first place, who still consider themselves pro-life, but don't like Trump, hate Trump, and it gives them more fodder to say, oh, now he wants to annex Canada, so now we hate him more. And he's supporting Mark Carney. Now, the irony is that a lot of those people that hate Trump would likely vote for Carney, because again, I'm talking about this group of Catholics and Christians and pro-lifers that, they certainly don't make up the majority, but there's a good significant number of them that would prefer to vote Liberal, mostly because it was the church's sort of go-to or default party dating back, 100 years. And that's since changed, and a lot of people haven't noticed. And so they still vote Liberal because their grandfather came over under a Liberal regime, and, they're forever thankful. But anyway, it's really hilarious to kind of watch the argument. They're quite confused because they thought that, oh, Carney's our man, but now Trump supports him. What's going on? That can't be right. There must be. What are we going to do now? They don't like Poilievre because they thought he was like Trump. He was Canada's Trump. So they're pulling their hair out. What are they going to do? Vote for Jagmeet Singh or some other Green Party or something? So it's quite hilarious to watch that and to see the comments that come to Campaign Life Coalition. We get emails, not many, but they're quite fun to read. The confusion that these people have over. Listen. Donald Trump, in a way, all his policies, all this sort of make America great again and closing in, closing the borders, if you will, withdrawing, UN funds, uh, repatriating all of their wherever they buy things, import, like cutting off imports, or at least putting high tariffs on them. In a way, that I don't know what you think about the principle of subsidiarity, but he's kind of doing a economic, if you will, or like an economic subsidiarity. So he's buy local, bring control back to domestic local industries, and we can have sustainability and control over our own economy that way. We're no longer reliant on the global economy. And to be honest, that's a Catholic principle, and that's not a bad deal. So we could look at many of his policies in that regard in our own Canadian government, and possibly learn and benefit from such policies.
Indeed. One of the things he's done, which would be stunning, would be to invite all sorts of Catholics into his administration. Our political right seems to be going in the exact opposite direction, very sadly. One of the things that was the most depressing to me is one of the politicians who I regard as a friend, a Catholic, a great Catholic, was just barred from running by Pierre Poilievre. That sort of Pierre Lemieux, great family man, I think like 6, 7 kids, beautiful Catholic, and just barred from running. What is that? How does that even work? Why? Can you get into that for us?
Yeah, it happens a lot with especially with pro-life candidates. We've been through this a couple of dozen times, I'm sure, over the 2 decades I've been with Campaign Life. They gave him a hard time 4 years ago when he tried to run as well. They gave him some kind of excuse that he didn't get. I think it was he didn't get his paperwork correct or something. Or no, what it was is he had run two consecutive times after losing because he was an MP for a number of years. Then he lost, and he tried to run twice in a row, 2 elections in a row, and he lost both times. Or I'm not sure, can't remember now if he lost the nomination or if he lost the election. I think it was the election. And so their rules in their constitution state that you can't run more than twice. If you lose, you can't run. So they gave him that excuse, even though he was the best candidate, that they could possibly have. And he, I don't understand. And this is the thing. We don't understand that he had a stellar record. The guy's got a resume that outdoes just about any MP in Parliament. And the guy is loved by everybody. He didn't have any detractors. He didn't have any haters. So I don't understand it, except the fact that they know he's a faithful Catholic, and they know that he's faithful to his pro-life views. Don't forget that these party people at headquarters, the ones that are advising the leaders, they're all in their 20s and 30s. And they've never had, they've likely had no other job except politics as operatives. And so they're very narrow focused. They haven't, but ironically, a lot of them are actually socially conservative, and a lot of them are pro-life, but they don't understand. I don't know what it is. And none of us, trust me, we've had these conversations 100 times. We don't understand. But there are some guys at head office, some, larger than life, if you will, advisors that are telling these 20 somethings, put the boots to that guy, stop that guy from running. Go and tell him they're just lackeys. But there's 1, 2, 3, I don't know how many guys behind the scenes that are calling the shots. And are they higher up than Poilievre? I don't know. But your guess is as good as mine. I'm sure there are some. Like while Rooney was still alive, he was still consulting for the party. So, there were some heavy hitters that are directing things. But we can't put our finger on, that's the guy or that's the girl or, that's the group of people that are doing this. We do know that we're being persecuted, that's for sure. And once in a while, they give us a gem. Once in a while, we get a good candidate elected, and they allow that person to run. It's just hard to know exactly where they're coming from.
It is a difficult situation in Canada because, unlike the United States, which has gone back and forth, we, especially of late, and when I say of late, I mean even like 60 years, we've had abortion über alles for 60 years. We've had like the abortion without, at least since the 90s, let's say, we've had no talk about abortion, even from our conservatives. They actually bar the debate. And we've got the most liberal abortion law on earth. There's no one. It's like us in China and maybe North Korea. It's abortion all the time, all at taxpayer expense, anytime you want. And it's our conservatives that refuse to allow the debate to open, to even consider addressing that, which is really stunning. So when people from the United States, even from Europe, actually look over to Canada and see our abortion regime and our conservatives who maintain it, they're like, wow, that's pretty sad. How do they? So it is one of the things that's hard for people to stomach in Canada even, and looking across the border, they're like, why do you even stay there? And so it is tough. And especially when Trudeau was threatening with the laws of repression of freedom of speech, when are you going to get arrested? Some people have. What motivates you, let me ask you, to stay in Canada? And why would you suggest that some Canadians do? Some Canadians feel like, you know what? Maybe the idea of becoming the 51st state, especially under Trump, is not that bad because it's been pathetic here for so long. What do we do?
The funny thing is I just moved to the province of New Brunswick back in September of last year. And we're right across. I can look out my window and I can see the homes along the river, the St. Croix River from Maine. And so I feel closer to the U.S. In fact, we go there to get gas every week. It's 50 cents a liter cheaper. So it's just literally 10 minutes from my doorstep to go and fill up. So we do that. And up until the tariff business started, we were doing a little bit of shopping in the local town as well. Because it wasn't because of price either. It was just because of availability of the particular products that we were looking for. So I have family relations in the States who left Canada long, like 2-3 decades ago, and because back then they felt crippled by the socio-political culture that we have here in Canada and all of our strict policies on banking and whatever. So, do I have an urge? Not really. But it's a good question. I'm sort of embarrassed because I don't have an answer to why do I stay in Canada. I hate the winter. We've had a brutal winter here, and we're not supposed to have them in southwestern New Brunswick. They told us they haven't had snow in 4 years here. So anyway, we had a terrible winter. So yeah, most Canadians complain about the cold, and yet we stay here. Well, you know what? I think we like our change up, right? We like the change of seasons. And we love our clean, relatively clean air and our beautiful forests and lakes and oceans. So, I mean, we've really got a beautiful country. And we're very comfortable here too. We have a good social net, which may or may not be a right thing to have, but we're a little bit like Sweden in that way. We've got a pretty comfortable safety net that nobody really has to suffer too much in Canada. And I think that's a little different in the States, where I think your poverty line is probably a lot lower than ours. So I've got a friend in the States who throws me a $20 bill whenever he sees me and goes, pick that up and smell it. Smell the smell of freedom. Just smell that freedom. So I had the taste of that freedom about 5 years ago. Went to the Washington March for Life, and I went looking for a cigar store. So in my travels, I came to a place. I think I saw the word cigar or something. I don't know what it was, but I walked up the stairs, walked in, and it was a bar. It was a cigar bar. And not only could you buy cigars here, but you could smoke them. And so I said, you got to be kidding. You can smoke in here? And the owner happened to be there, and it's a woman, believe it or not, from Ottawa, Ontario. Anyway. So she said, "Yeah, you can." Well, I said, "I'll be back later." So I went to whatever event I was going to. I came back and I sat down at the bar and I had a cigar and I thought, man, oh man, this is beautiful. What freedom to have this. Now, of course, that's not everywhere in the States. That was grandfathered in that particular bar. But the point is, it does feel to Canadians that for sure that America has much more freedom. Ask an American that they don't necessarily agree with that. So the grass is always greener on the other side, right? I can't see myself leaving Canada. I don't care how bad it gets, because to be honest, the worse it gets, the holier I get, because it forces me on my knees. It forces me to pray more, and God's in control. And I feel it's my duty as a Canadian citizen to bring Christ back into our culture. So if I leave, it's almost like I'm abandoning that task that I believe God has put on all our hearts to bring him back, bring him into the culture, bring people to heaven, right? So, yeah, I feel that I'd be abandoning my post, if you will.
As the head of Campaign Life Coalition, you are the political arm of the pro-life movement. You're the most vociferous and influential pro-life group in Canada. And yet many people would say, oh, you guys haven't really achieved anything. In fact, it was funny. I was doing an interview with Rebecca Kiesling. She's conceived in rape, and Save the One is her group. And just an amazing warrior for life. When I sat down with her in America, we were at a beautiful Bringing America Back to Life conference. She had nothing but praise for Canada. The Canadian pro-life movement, she said, is the strongest pro-life movement on earth. She was all about how sticking to their guns and not allowing the exceptions for rape and incest is the most incredible thing. And think about it from her perspective as the child of rape who works in an organization full of women who are conceived in rape and survived, and those who have been raped and have held their children, some who've given them up and for adoption and some who haven't, but also those, the sorrow of those who cry in pain because while they could get over their own rape, they couldn't get over the fact that they had killed their own child. So anyway, kudos from Rebecca Kiesling for the pro-life movement in Canada. But it is from the inside. It seems so difficult, so hard. And it almost seems like there's no way forward. So what do we do? And I know that's a big question, but as you answered, I also want you to get into what you're doing politically.
Back in, what was it, when were we in Rome the last time with the LifeSite Rome Forum, 2018, 19, somewhere in there. I spoke briefly there on a panel about pretty much covering that question you just asked. How do we get people involved? How do we engage in the political arena? And I was promoting and supporting and pushing the idea of entering in to certainly vote pro-life first and foremost, to help with a campaign, help a candidate with his or her campaign. What I didn't emphasize, I'm sure I mentioned it, but I now have raised the bar a notch. We no longer can just vote. We can no longer just knock on doors or make phone calls or financially help a candidate. We, especially as Catholics, as Christians, we need to enter into the fray. We actually have to run ourselves, because every place I go to talk, I will look at their city council, and I'll go to their website, the city's website. I'll look at the council. I'll get pictures. There are all the pictures of the council members and the mayor, and I will try to find out where they stand on the issues, just by very superficial research. So I Google all this stuff, and I try to find any information I can on the candidates. So then I go to the venue, and I put their faces up on the wall, on the screen, and say, does anybody know this person? And most people say no. And I show the next councilor member, and I show the mayor. And then I show a group shot of them. I say, well, this is your city council. I assume all of you good people here in this room, pro-life, Catholic, maybe just, another faith, another Christian faith. I assume because you're good Christians that you had voted. You voted during the municipal election. Well, who did you vote for? Did you vote for any of these people? And then they kind of sheepishly go, yeah, I did. Like one or two will be honest and put up their hand. Yeah, I voted for that guy. And I said, oh, well, are they pro-life? Well, why are we as Catholics especially? We have parishes. We have 5 parishes in a town of 100,000 people, right? 5, 6, 7 parishes maybe. And we have the clergy, we have this, we're a significant voting bloc of Catholics. Why do we have a secular city council? Why do we have a secular mayor? It doesn't make sense. Why we're allowing these people who have no ties, they're not lined up with our social, our faith and morals at all. What are we doing? Why are we voting these people in? There is no excuse for that. Absolutely zero excuse to have less than a majority of Catholics on a given city council. So I think that's where we start. That's where we start. We get people to focus on their own backyard because the budget's huge. I mean, education comes out of there. You've got the education is controlled by the province, but the municipality collects the taxes for it, and the trustees. Education is one of the biggest, if not the biggest, budget other than health that anybody can work on. So we need good, faithful Catholics working on that kind of task, because how can we trust anyone else with it? Catholic, good, informed, faithful Catholics make the best citizens, and also they make the best politicians. So because we believe in the dignity of the human person. We don't have to have these groups, these special groups that are promoting LGBT or trans or drunken mothers against drunk drivers. Catholics embrace all people as Christ would, and we don't need special interest groups, and we don't need pride flags and whatnot. So what Campaign Life Coalition's trying to do is to get these Catholics and Christians to run, not just to help, not just to vote, but to run. And people like Pierre Lemieux and there's dozens of others. We have some good Catholic, faithful Catholics that have been elected, but they're all alone. And they can't do a lot when they're one person in a room of dozens, and then sometimes in federal hundreds. So that's where it's simple. I understand. It sounds simple, but look at your church. How many people are registered at your church? There's got to be 300 people minimum, probably 1,500, but they don't all go to church. But the fact is, you probably have 300 people that faithfully go to church every week. We can't get 5, 6, 7 people to run on city council. Over the years, we have said that we need more support from the clergy and especially the bishops. If the bishops would utilize the power that they have, not to lord over Catholic principles over non-Catholics, but certainly within the Catholic realm, they can rally up. They can get us awake, shake us awake with statements of support for Catholic candidates. They don't have to be partisan. They're not going to say vote for that guy because he's Catholic. They'll just say that guy there, John Smith, is running, and his values line up with Catholic values, and that guy over there, her values line up with Catholic. That's what we need to hear. We need to hear that from our clergy, that we need to vote our values, and not the basket of values, the pro-life values, right? Those pro-life, pro-traditional marriage, traditional family. Those are the true values. That's what the church teaches us. So that's what Campaign Life Coalition tries to do. We've been successful at it, but we just don't have enough. What's the scripture? The harvest is plenty, but the workers are few. The laborers are few. So we need that. There's lots of capable and able Catholics out there. They're not coming into the field to work, so we need them there, and we'll help them get elected.
For U.S. residents, creating a will has never been easier. Thanks to My Legacy Will, an online platform free of charge, you can now create your own will and choose to include LifeSite News in it, specify where your funeral will take place, the number of masses to be offered for your soul, and how your estate will be distributed. We would be deeply grateful if you remembered LifeSite News in your will. Visit mylegacywill.com/LifeSite News. Thank you for your support, and may God bless you.
Tell us about Mark Carney. Who is this guy, and why is he to be avoided? Why should every Catholic not dare to vote for a liberal who would then get Mark Carney elected?
Yeah, he's a problem. First of all, he's very well connected. He's way more powerful than Justin Trudeau ever was. He has worldwide connections. He's one of one of the elite, if you will, global elite. He belongs to that global economic system. And he likes to pretend, at least, to be a Catholic, and he makes it very clear that he's Catholic. In fact, the media have helped him with that, asking him questions right off the top. One of his first press releases, where they asked him, "Oh, we noticed you went to Mass, and where do you stand on a woman's right to choose, so-called?" And of course, we all know what he said about that, being that he fully supports abortion, and that he would do what he can to increase access. Like, he certainly wouldn't cut it down. And then on top of that, he promotes LGBT rights. In fact, even with his own daughter, allowing her, I can't remember, is it her to a he or he to a her? But he supported that move with his own child. And it's tantamount to child abuse to support such things. I just can't imagine how anybody could do that to their own child. So that's why he's so dangerous, especially to he's trying to get the Catholic vote, and he'll get a good portion of it because of the silence of our clergy. In my view, they're not condemning him. And why aren't they condemning him? What is it that Carney has on them? Is it money? Does he give a lot to the church? I don't know. That's a cynical comment, and God forgive me for that. But I wonder. I don't understand. Like, what excuse could there be? Wouldn't you be itching? Wouldn't you, if you were a bishop, just be itching to come out with a public statement that informs the Catholic voter that Mark Carney is not the Catholic? He's not lined up with our values at all. I just don't know. And that just goes to show how far down we've come, and that the need for you as a Catholic to enter in is tantamount. It's just it's your duty. Oh, I think it's Pope Leo XIII said it's our duty to run and infill, if you will, Catholic principles, Christ's principles into the culture. So that's our duty to do that.
Carney is running from one statement. It's funny because he doesn't normally retreat from anything, but he has retreated. So one of the most hopeful things probably in the last 50 years in Canada was the Freedom Convoy that really sparked, I think, once again in Canada, a hope that I don't know that how many have ever seen in their lifetimes. I know for my children in their 20s, it was the first and most hopeful thing they'd ever seen in Canada, after many of them being crushed out of jobs and out of their schooling, etc., because of the COVID insanity, the forced mandates and all of that. The truckers were just incredible. Mark Carney, though, has a history with the truckers, which I'll give you here, and I'd like your comment on. Mark Carney in 2022 accused the Freedom Convoy of sedition. He said, and he's trying to sort of not talk about this, but it's very, very serious. In a February 7th, 2022 column published in one of our major papers called the Globe and Mail, Carney, it was entitled, "It's Time to End the Sedition in Ottawa." Carney wrote that the Freedom Convoy was a movement of sedition. And he said, that's a word I never thought I'd use in Canada. It means incitement of resistance or insurrection against lawful authority. And he said, if left unchecked, that it would achieve its goal of undermining our democracy. If that sounds familiar, it should, because that was Nancy Pelosi and all of the repeated through the leftist-controlled media in America. They're undermining our democracy. They're undermining our democracy. And that is probably where they got the line from. Mark Carney being one of the globalist leaders and informant to Justin Trudeau. And it wouldn't surprise me at all that they would get their marching orders from him. But he was for crushing the Freedom Convoy. And he's now hiding from that because anybody who wants to get elected office in Canada can't be against the truckers because it was the most hopeful movement Canada had seen in 50 years. So your thoughts on the truckers, and is that sentiment still alive in Canada? Because there was so much hope there, because you finally thought for the first time in your life, wow, maybe we have a moral majority in Canada, like they always talk about in the United States. But where did they sleep? We never see them. All of a sudden we saw them. It's like they came out of the woodwork for a second. They were crushed and everything else, but they sparked a worldwide movement that honestly helped to get rid of the COVID insanity.
I was shocked, pleasantly shocked at the whole goings on, and people that I heard went to visit the convoy. People that normally don't participate in any kind of activity at all, any kind of activism, went there. And many of them went with their families. So it was a spectacle to behold. Can it be replicated in Canada? I fear that it can't now. I mean, at this moment, because I think we only have it in us every once in a decade. I don't think there's enough anger built up. I think we got a lot of that out. Now, it could be another tyrannical dictate from Carney or whoever the prime minister might be next that stirs up the soul, if you will, of Canada to get out and do something. But like if another vaccine mandate comes along or whatever, I don't know, but I hope so. And we'll certainly do what we can. Now, Campaign Life Coalition as an organization can't get involved in that because it's not our mandate. But Catholics, Christians certainly can. Again, Pope Leo XIII, he talked about sedition, which treason. He said that Catholics are called not to be passive or silent in the face of moral decay or anti-Christian ideologies, but to actively shape society through faithful witness, courageous action, and unity. So that really describes the trucker protest. So to shrink, the Pope further went on to say, to shrink from conflict is to be guilty of treason to Christ. That's pretty powerful. And so Christians must manfully resist and never yield to the enemy. To me, that's a rallying call for us to, get off of our duffs and stop scrolling and get out there and do something. Unfortunately, we do little mini protests all the time. We encourage people to go to school trustee meetings to give moral support for the delegations that are there to, for or against whatever it is that we're fighting. Little rallies on Parliament Hill on euthanasia or on abortion, and we don't get we don't get that kind of response. So, maybe there's a bit of a defeatist attitude in Canadians because, as you alluded to, that they think that just nothing has changed in 60 years. We're not getting anywhere. But we can't get anywhere. Again, I'll go back. We can't get anywhere without Christ. If we win a battle today without Christ, it'll just be run over by the next government and repealed and shoved aside and say, no, we're not going with that anymore. This is the new regime, and here we are. We're gonna do it this way. But if we make these changes, if we make this all of our actions backed up with the love of Christ and our support of him, then things will change more permanently and positively. And I don't know how to make that happen. But certainly prayer, fasting, and action. We just have to act. I don't want to run for city council. But I'm thinking I might have to. It's my obligation, my duty. I don't want to, what did he say? Shrink from conflict. I don't want to be guilty of treason to Christ. That's hitting my heart in a profound way.
Canada's a confusing place. We don't vote for the prime minister. We vote for local reps. The local reps, then the ones with the party with the most local reps, they become the ruling party, and the leader of that party becomes the prime minister. But your job has been made somewhat easy because, much like in the United States, the Liberals don't allow anyone with pro-life convictions of any sort, named or unnamed, to run at all, nor do the NDP. So we're dealing then with a few parties that are the Conservatives, the People's Party, PPC, I think it's called now, and then the New Blue, is it a third one?
No, New Blue is a provincial party.
What's the third one then? United Party. Okay, so we've got three options, if you will.
And the CHP.
Oh, and the Christian Heritage Party, of course. So these parties, the lesser ones, the ones that aren't so popular, this PPC, the United Party, the Christian Heritage Party, they don't have any members elected. Is that correct?
Elected, correct. That's correct.
Campaign Life has an interesting strategy. A lot of people would say, hey, you got to then vote for the Conservative candidate only. You should disregard whether your candidate is, because so there's a lot of Conservative candidates who are totally pro-abortion and totally pro-homosexual marriage and everything else. And, basically they're like the US version of rhinos, Republican in name only, Conservative in name only. So what do you suggest in terms of election? How do we thread the needle on this one?
We've always supported the idea that you vote for your local member. Of course, that's how we do a parliamentary system here in Canada. We vote for our local candidate who represents approximately 100,000, 120,000 people in a particular riding. So you have usually, a choice of 4 or 5, 6 candidates to choose from, depending on what party they're running in. We always suggest that you vote for the pro-life candidate, regardless of party. Now, as you said very clearly, there won't be a Liberal pro-life candidate, there won't be an NDP pro-life candidate, and there won't be a Green Party candidate. The only possibility is that we'll have a People's Party of Canada candidate, a CHP candidate, and a Conservative candidate. So we really only have 3 choices in any given riding that we can vote for. Now, there might be an independent, but we ask our supporters to please vote for the pro-life candidate. And, you get all kinds of arguments and pushback about, well, we don't want the Liberals to win, so I'm going to vote for the Conservative guy, even though he's maybe not pro-life, or he's not as pro-life as he could be, even though the PPC candidate is completely pro-life and the CHP candidate is completely pro-life. They think that's a wasted vote, that will cause the Liberals to win. Well, that's another topic for another video, John Henry. But I don't think I don't believe that, and nor does Rod Taylor at Christian Heritage Party or Maxime Bernier at People's Party of Canada. They think that the only way to send a message to the Conservative Party of Canada and the Liberal Party of Canada is to vote your conscience, so that if every Catholic and every Christian did that and voted for the candidate that lines up best with Christian values, that's going to send a message someday, maybe not this election, but if we kept doing it election after election, they would finally wake up and realize, hey, we're losing a lot of votes here because we don't have a pro-life candidate. But that seems like an idealistic view, but we actually have the numbers. We have the numbers, and we could make Canada great again if all pro-life Christians and people of goodwill voted the values that line up with their respective Christian faith. A lot of people talk about values and they say, these leaders will say, those aren't Canadian values. Well, those aren't yet. No, I'm talking about Christ's values. I'm talking about biblical values, virtue, Christian virtue. And don't let this video end thinking that Mark Carney is the bad guy. Well, Pierre Poilievre's not much better. He certainly isn't pro-life, and he won't allow any legislation to advance in his party if he's prime minister. There will be no change on the status quo of abortion in Canada under Poilievre or any of these leaders except for Rod Taylor and Maxime Bernier.
Stark reality in Canada. I want to end off with this one little clip. This is from the Vice President of the United States talking about hard times in America, where he sort of thought, gee, it's all lost. And listen to his conclusion.
We're not going to solve any of these problems unless we have the courage to speak the truth, unless we have the courage to live the truth. And I will say that one thing I think is true of Rod, and I think it's true of much of the conservative movement in 2020, is something that sometimes we're so good at pointing out, or sometimes I should say we were so good at pointing out some very obvious problems that we would sometimes give in to this despair, this idea that because things were not going great in 2020, because things weren't always going in our way electorally, we would give into this sense that the countries that we love, the civilization that we love, was always on a negative trajectory. And I say that as not a criticism of Rod, because I myself have sometimes felt in the lowest moments of American politics that, you know what, maybe this country is just not going in the right direction. But I think that what we've learned over the last few months is that the American people, and I think Western peoples, are a hell of a lot more resilient than our elites give them credit for. Now, that's not to say, again, that this is easy or that it's ever going to be easy, but I think if we speak the truth, if we refuse to live by lies, then I think we can re-deliver on the promise of Western civilization.
And I think, Jeff, that's what the Canadians are doing in Canada, continuing to, despite all the hell, tell the truth and keep doing it, regardless of the consequences, because the real fear we should have is fear of the Lord, fear of offending the God who loves us so much, who is the only real judge in the end of all of us. Jeff, thank you so much for being with us. And where can people learn more about Campaign Life? Where can they look up who to vote for in Canada? Because you're going to get that call a lot. Who do I vote for? Where can they go?
Great question. Thank you for ending it that way. Go to voteprolife.ca. It's as simple as that. You put in your postal code and you can find out who the pro-life candidate is closest to you. It may not be in your riding, but maybe you could go and help that candidate on his or her campaign. And on top of that, and perhaps even before that, pray. It's Lent after all. Pray, fast, and then vote pro-life.
Jeff Gunnarson, so good to have you. God bless you, my friend. And look forward to seeing you at the March for Life.
Thanks again.
And God bless all of you. And we'll see you next time.
Aloha, everyone. This is Jason Jones for LifeSide News. We hope you enjoyed this video. For more content like this, check the link in the description. You can also connect with us on social media to stay up to date with the latest news on life, faith, family, and freedom. Thanks for watching, and may God bless you.